All right, so are you ready to dive deep?
Always.
Today, we're going to be tackling the insights of Abhijit Chavda.
Okay.
He's this geopolitical analyst, historian, and podcaster, and he is known for just going deep on some really complex global issues.
I've seen some of his stuff.
Yeah, we've got a recent interview of his, and we're going to unpack it.
Sounds good.
This one is a real mind-bender.
Well, I'm really interested to hear what he has to say, especially about India.
Oh, yeah.
He brings a unique historical angle to the discussion. I think the listeners are going to find it fascinating.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He challenges a lot of conventional thinking. For example, he talks about how India has traditionally been seen as this, soft power.
Yeah.
Almost like a punching bag on the world stage.
It's interesting that he uses the 2008 Mumbai terror attacks as an example.
Right.
Those were horrific.
Oh, absolutely.
Coordinated assaults that went on for days. And Chavda points out that India's response at the time was, well, pretty muted. There was a sense that this was just something that India had to endure.
Right. And it's a stark contrast to how India's been acting in recent years.
Exactly.
Think about the 2019 Balakot airstrikes.
Right.
That was a direct and forceful response to a terrorist attack.
Yeah.
Chavda argues that this is a sign of a new India, one that's not willing to sit back and just take it anymore.
And it's not just about the military action either.
Right.
Chavda points to India's massive infrastructure buildup along its border with China.
Oh, yeah.
Roads, bridges, airfields. It's a pretty clear signal that they're preparing for a potential conflict.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I have to ask you, listener, do you agree with Chavda's assessment?
Yeah.
Has India truly become more assertive under Prime Minister Modi?
I mean, that's a complex question.
It is.
There's no easy answer. What's undeniable is that there has been a shift in Indian foreign policy.
For sure.
And it's a shift that has implications for the whole region.
Absolutely. Speaking of regional dynamics, Chavda brings up this fascinating concept called the Thucydides trap. Have you ever heard of that?
I have.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a historical pattern that has been observed for centuries.
Okay.
Imagine you have two neighbors.
Right.
One has always had the biggest house, the nicest car, the most influence. But then the other neighbor starts catching up fast, building a bigger pool, getting a fancier car.
Yeah.
You see where I'm going with this?
Yeah, I see it.
That tension, that fear of being overtaken,
Right.
that's the essence of the Thucydides trap.
Okay. So basically, when a rising power challenges an existing dominant power, conflict becomes almost inevitable.
Exactly.
It's like this unspoken rivalry that can escalate really quickly.
Exactly. The established power feels threatened.
Yeah.
And the rising power wants its place in the sun.
Of course.
It's a recipe for tension and often, unfortunately, war.
Right.
Chavda draws a parallel between ancient Greece and the current relationship between the U.S. and China.
Makes sense.
He sees China as the rising power. The U.S. is the established power, and, well, you can kind of see where this is headed.
Right. Okay. So that makes sense in the context of U.S.-China relations. But here's where it gets really interesting. Chavda suggests that India's rapid economic growth could actually trigger the Thucydides trap. Not with China, but with the U.S.
Right.
Yeah.
Think about it.
Yeah.
India's economy is growing at an incredible pace.
It is.
They're focusing on domestic manufacturing, boosting their defense industry. They're checking all the boxes of a potential superpower.
So is Chavda saying that the U.S. might start seeing India as a threat, even though they seem to be on good terms right now?
Well, it's not really about current relationships.
Okay.
It's about potential future power dynamics.
I see.
The Thucydides trap is about how those dynamics can lead to conflict, even if no one actually wants a war.
Right. It's almost like it's inevitable in a way.
Yeah.
This is getting pretty intense.
Yeah.
But it's a good reminder that global politics isn't a two-player game. Chavda makes the point that there are no permanent friends or enemies in geopolitics, only temporary alliances based on shared interests.
He's right.
Yeah.
He dives into this web of shifting allegiances, especially when it comes to India, the U.S., Canada, Pakistan, and China.
Oh, wow.
He specifically mentions the Five Eyes Intelligence Alliance.
Oh.
It's this network involving the U.S., Canada, the U.K., Australia, and New Zealand,
Got it.
where they share intelligence and coordinate strategies.
It sounds like a spy movie.
It kind of does.
But I guess intelligence sharing is a huge part of international relations.
It is, absolutely.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is that Chavda points out how even these seemingly solid alliances can shift.
Right.
He uses a really unexpected example, Pakistan.
Okay.
For decades, Pakistan was essentially a Chinese ally.
Right.
But recently, things have changed.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting. So they've pivoted away from China.
Mm-hmm.
That's a huge shift. Where have they landed in this complex web of alliances?
Well, that's what's so fascinating.
Okay.
They've actually transitioned to become more of an American asset in the region.
Oh, wow.
It's a perfect example of how temporary alliances can completely reshape the geopolitical landscape.
Whoa. Talk about shifting sands.
Yeah.
Okay. So we've got these complex alliances forming and reforming, but then Chavda brings in another layer, the Khalistan movement.
Hmm.
He argues that it's being used as a pressure point against India.
Now, for those of you who might not be familiar,
Yeah.
the Khalistan movement is a separatist movement that seeks to create an independent Sikh homeland in the Punjab region of India.
Right.
What Chavda argues is that this movement is primarily driven by forces outside of India.
So he's saying that there's not a lot of genuine support for Khalistan within India itself.
That's his claim.
Okay.
He sees it as a tool that countries like Canada, the U.S., and Australia use to exert influence on New Delhi.
I see.
He even goes so far as to say that these countries are actively harboring Khalistani terrorists.
Now that's a bold statement.
It is.
Is he talking about specific individuals?
Yes, he mentions two people in particular, Hardeep Singh Nijjar and Gurpat Want Singh Pannu.
Oh.
He labels them as Canadian and American terrorists, respectively.
Wow, that's pretty serious.
Yeah.
What's his evidence for these claims?
He highlights how these individuals have been allowed to operate freely in these countries, despite being accused of serious crimes in India.
Okay.
He specifically brings up Nijjar, who was denied Canadian citizenship twice
Wow.
after entering the country illegally. Yet somehow he eventually became a citizen. Chavda uses this as evidence of a double standard at play.
It definitely raises some questions about how these countries are handling this issue.
Yeah.
But the Khalistan movement itself has a pretty complex history, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It has its roots in the 1970s and 80s, a period marked by significant unrest in Punjab.
Right.
Chavda argues that Pakistan, at that time, was instrumental in fueling the movement, providing training and support to Khalistani militants.
And I remember reading that this was during the Cold War when Pakistan was a key U.S. ally.
Right.
Is Chavda implying that American support for Pakistan may have indirectly contributed to the rise of the Khalistan movement?
That's what he suggests.
Wow.
Yeah, it's like a chain reaction of geopolitical events
Right.
with long-lasting consequences.
It's all starting to feel like a spy thriller.
Tough.
But just when you think it can't get any wilder, Chavda throws artificial intelligence into the mix.
Right. This is where he really starts looking into the future.
Okay.
He asks this really thought-provoking question. Could AI be the key to achieving long-term superpower status?
Okay, I'm on the edge of my seat here. What's his take on that?
Well, his answer is a little unsettling.
Okay.
He argues that the U.S. is likely far more advanced in AI than they're letting on.
Uh-huh.
He even suggests that they might have achieved artificial general intelligence, or AGI.
AGI. Remind me what that is again?
Oh, it's basically AI that can perform any intellectual task that a human can. Think about that for a second.
Yeah.
It could revolutionize everything.
It really could.
Yeah.
Wow. And what about artificial superintelligence, ASI? Isn't that the stuff of sci-fi movies?
It is, but Chavda suggests it might not be so far-fetched.
Oh, wow.
ASI is this hypothetical AI that surpasses human intelligence in every way.
Okay.
Imagine an AI that can solve problems we can't even comprehend.
Okay, now that's just mind-blowing.
It is.
But what does this have to do with superpower status?
Well, Chavda argues that a nation with ASI would have an unprecedented advantage.
Makes sense.
They could make breakthroughs in technology, medicine, warfare,
Yeah.
you name it.
So basically, whoever controls the most advanced AI could potentially rule the world. Is that what he's getting at?
It's a chilling thought, but it's one we need to seriously consider.
For sure.
He even draws a parallel to historical examples of military technology being kept secret for decades,
Okay.
like stealth bombers. He suggests the same thing could be happening with AI. What we see publicly might just be the tip of the iceberg.
Okay, this is a lot to process.
It is.
So far, we've covered India's evolving role on the world stage, the Thucydides trap, the complexities of global alliances, the Khalistan movement as a pressure point, and even the potential of AI to reshape the balance of power. That's a lot to unpack.
And remember, these are just a few of the insights Chavda offers in this interview.
Right.
He delves into many other topics.
Yeah.
All connected by this underlying theme of rapid and often unpredictable geopolitical change.
It's clear that the world is changing at a dizzying pace, and it's more important than ever to stay informed. We'll be back with part 2 of this deep dive, so don't touch that dial.
See you next time. So picking up where we left off, Chavda really paints this picture of the world in a constant state of flux,
Yeah.
with power dynamics shifting faster than ever before.
It feels that way.
Yeah.
He even goes as far to say that the current geopolitical landscape is more volatile than it's been in decades, maybe even since World War II.
It's true.
That's a pretty bold statement. But when you look at all the conflicts brewing around the world,
Yeah.
it's hard to ignore.
It's true. There's the ongoing war in Ukraine, the simmering tensions in the Middle East, the rise of China,
Right.
the resurgence of Russia. It's definitely a recipe for instability.
And in the midst of all of this, Chavda brings up this point that I found really interesting. He talks about how the very definition of power is changing in the 21st century.
Yeah, traditionally we've thought of power, in terms of military might, economic strength, and political influence.
Right.
But Chavda argues that other factors are becoming just as important.
Like what?
Things like technology, information, and even the ability to control narratives.
Like a whole new game with new rules and new players.
Exactly.
He even uses the COVID-19 pandemic to illustrate his point.
Oh, yeah.
He says, you can shut down the world with just a virus. A few grams of a virus worldwide.
Yeah.
Think about that for a second.
It's true.
A microscopic entity brought the global economy to its knees.
Yeah, it really highlights how vulnerabilities can emerge from the most unexpected places.
And when you factor in the rise of artificial intelligence, as we discussed earlier, the potential for disruption just becomes even greater.
Right.
Remember, Chavda believes that the U.S. might already possess AI that surpasses human intelligence. Imagine the power that would give them.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a little bit scary.
It is a little scary.
It's almost overwhelming to think about. But Chavda's message isn't one of doom and gloom.
No.
He's not saying give up all hope.
No.
Instead, he's urging us to not just be spectators in this grand geopolitical game.
Yeah.
He emphasizes the importance of understanding these trends and adapting to them.
Being proactive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He specifically addresses India, saying that the country needs to continue pursuing policies that promote economic growth, strengthen its military, and secure its borders. He believes that India has the potential to become a major global player, but they can't afford to be complacent.
Right. They can't rest on their laurels.
But he's not just talking about India, right?
No.
It feels like he's speaking to all of us.
Yes.
Urging us to be more aware, more engaged, more proactive in shaping the future we want to see.
Absolutely. He's challenging this whole notion of soft power,
Okay.
arguing that it's often an excuse for inaction.
Yeah.
He uses the example of India's response to the 2008 Mumbai terror attacks again,
Right.
contrasting it with the more assertive actions they've taken in recent years,
Yeah.
like the Balakot airstrikes. His point is that India is no longer content to be a passive player on the world stage.
So it's not just about military strength.
No, not at all. He also points to the importance of building a robust economy, focusing on domestic manufacturing, becoming less reliant on other countries. He argues that this is essential for any nation that wants to be truly sovereign.
It's about taking control of your own destiny. It makes sense.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He even criticizes India's past leadership for failing to embrace this vision of a strong and independent nation.
Really?
He recalls a statement by former Prime Minister Manmohan Singh who said, "We have no ambitions of being a great nation."
Wow.
Chavda sees this as a missed opportunity, a sign of a lack of ambition that has held India back.
That's a pretty harsh assessment. But does he see any signs of hope for India's future?
He does, particularly under the current leadership.
Okay.
He highlights the focus on infrastructure development,
Yeah.
the push for domestic manufacturing, and the more assertive foreign policy stance as positive signs.
Okay.
He even brings up the recent visit of India's external affairs minister to Pakistan, which was the first high-level visit in several years.
Wow.
He sees it as a sign of a thaw in relations, albeit a cautious one.
So maybe there's a chance for peace in the region after all.
Well, he's quick to point out that Pakistan is no longer the primary threat to India.
Okay.
He sees China as the real challenge,
Right.
a nation with far greater economic and military might.
That's a bit of a reality check.
It is. He argues that China is trying to sweet-talk India right now,
Yeah.
but they haven't taken any concrete steps to resolve the long-standing border dispute.
Yeah.
He warns that India needs to be wary of China's intentions and not allow itself to be lulled into a false sense of security.
So, trust but verify. It sounds like a delicate balancing act.
It is, and Chavda believes the next few decades will be crucial for India.
All right.
He sees a window of opportunity for them to achieve their full potential, but he also recognizes the challenges ahead.
What kind of challenges are you talking about?
Well, for one, he emphasizes the importance of continuity in policy, arguing that any significant deviation from the current path could derail India's progress.
Yeah.
He even expresses concern about the possibility of civil unrest, particularly if the government fails to address issues like illegal immigration.
Illegal immigration is a hot-button issue in many countries these days.
It is.
Yeah.
And India is no exception. He highlights the presence of a large number of Bangladeshi immigrants in India,
Wow.
as well as the lingering issue of the Khalistan movement as potential flashpoints.
Yeah.
He even suggests that foreign powers could try to exploit these internal divisions to destabilize India.
So it's not just about external threats, but internal ones as well.
Exactly. He points to events like the Delhi riots as examples of how quickly things can spiral out of control.
Oh, yeah.
He acknowledges the logistical challenges of deporting millions of illegal immigrants, but he argues that the government needs to take concrete steps to address the issue before it becomes a major crisis.
That sounds like a daunting task.
It is. He also advocates for strengthening India's police force and intelligence agencies to counter any potential threats, both internal and external.
So it's about building up their defenses on multiple fronts.
Precisely. But amidst all this talk of conflict and instability, Chavda does offer a glimmer of hope.
Okay, I was wondering when we'd get to the good news.
He believes that the emergence of a multipolar world with multiple centers of power could actually lead to a more stable and balanced global order.
Really?
He points to the rise of China, Russia, India,
Yeah.
and even regional powers like France and Iran as evidence of this shift away from a unipolar world dominated by the U.S.
So instead of one superpower calling all the shots, we'd have multiple power centers balancing each other out.
Exactly. He acknowledges that this transition will be turbulent.
Of course.
But he sees it as a necessary step towards a more equitable and just global system.
It's like the world is going through a growing pains phase.
That's a good way to put it. He also highlights the growing importance of alliances like BRICS, which brings together Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa.
Yeah.
He believes that such alliances could help counterbalance the influence of the West and promote a more multipolar world.
BRICS is a pretty powerful grouping. It represents a huge chunk of the world's population and economic output.
Exactly. He even suggests that a future alliance between Russia, India, and China, while still premature, could become a major force in global politics.
Now, that would be a game changer. But wouldn't the border disputes between India and China make such an alliance difficult?
He acknowledges the complexities, particularly given those ongoing border disputes, but he believes that if these issues can be resolved, the potential for cooperation is enormous.
So resolving that border issue is key.
Absolutely. He emphasizes the importance of it. Arguing that it's essential for India's long-term security and stability. He also points out that China is currently trying to improve relations with India, partly due to their growing isolation from the West.
I see.
He sees this as an opportunity for India to leverage its position and secure a favorable resolution to the border dispute.
So it sounds like there's a chance for diplomacy to prevail.
There is, but he cautions against being overly optimistic. He believes that China will ultimately prioritize its own interests.
And India needs to be prepared to stand firm on its demands.
So it's a delicate dance of diplomacy and firmness.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He also expresses concern about the influence of the Five Eyes Intelligence Alliance. Remember that network we talked about earlier?
Yeah.
He sees it as a tool of Western dominance. And argues that India needs to develop its own intelligence capabilities and become less reliant on Western intelligence agencies.
He's really pushing for India to become more self-sufficient and independent.
He is. He highlights the case of Hardeep Singh Nijjar, who was allegedly killed by Indian agents in Canada. He argues that this incident demonstrates the lengths to which Western intelligence agencies will go to target individuals deemed a threat to their interests.
Wow, that's a serious accusation.
It is.
Yeah.
And he suggests that India needs to be more proactive in countering such threats and developing its own covert capabilities.
So it's not just about defense, but also about intelligence and counterintelligence. Exactly. He also touches upon the issue of religious and cultural identity,
Okay.
arguing that India needs to rediscover its Hindu roots and become less influenced by Western ideas.
That's an interesting point. Many countries struggle with balancing their own traditions with the influence of globalization.
Exactly. He criticizes the tendency among some Indians, particularly in urban areas,
Yeah,
to adopt Western lifestyles and values at the expense of their own traditions.
that makes sense.
He believes that this cultural erosion is weakening India's sense of national identity and making it more susceptible to foreign influence.
So he's advocating for a return to traditional values.
In a way,
Yeah.
he advocates for a revival of Hindu culture and values,
Okay.
arguing that it's essential for India to reclaim its place as a global spiritual leader.
That's a bold vision.
It is. He also expresses concern about the lack of strong leadership within the Hindu community.
Okay.
He contrasts this with the more organized and hierarchical structures of other religions,
Yeah.
such as Christianity and Islam.
It sounds like he's calling for a kind of spiritual awakening within India.
You could say that. He believes that India needs to develop a new generation of Hindu leaders who can inspire and unite the community. He suggests that this could involve reforming the management of Hindu temples,
Okay.
empowering religious institutions, and promoting Hindu education.
So it's about strengthening the foundations of Hinduism from within.
Exactly. He also emphasizes the importance of interfaith dialogue and cooperation,
Right.
arguing that India's diverse religious traditions can be a source of strength rather than division.
That's a powerful message, especially in a world that often seems so divided along religious lines.
Exactly. He believes that India can serve as a model for the world,
Okay.
demonstrating how different religions can coexist peacefully and contribute to a shared vision of progress.
It's an inspiring thought.
It is. He concludes by urging India to embrace its destiny as a great nation, one that is both materially prosperous and spiritually enlightened. He sees the 21st century as a time of great opportunity for India, but also a time of great peril.
Right.
He believes that the choices India makes in the coming years will determine not only its own fate, but also the fate of the world.
That's a lot of weight on India's shoulders.
It is. It's a powerful message and one that resonates deeply in the current geopolitical climate.
Yeah.
As we grapple with the complexities of a rapidly changing world,
Right.
Chavda's insights offer a valuable framework for understanding the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead.
Like he's giving us a roadmap for navigating these turbulent times.
Exactly. He reminds us that we are not passive bystanders in this global drama.
Right.
We have the power to shape the future, but only if we are willing to engage with the world in a thoughtful and informed manner.
So it's a call to action.
Exactly. And that brings us to a crucial question that Chavda poses to his listeners. If the 2020s are indeed a decade of massive geopolitical transformation, what does this mean for you and the future you envision?
Whoa. That's a question that deserves some serious thought. It's not just about geopolitics. It's about all of us and the world we want to create.
Yeah, it really makes you think
It does.
about what kind of world we're headed towards.
Right.
He really pushes us to think critically and question what we think we know and just be prepared for the unexpected.
It's almost like he's saying, wake up, pay attention.
Yeah.
The world is changing, whether you're ready or not.
Exactly. And, one of the most important themes that comes up throughout his analysis is this idea that we're moving away from a world dominated by a single superpower.
Right.
He believes that the era of American dominance is fading,
Okay.
and a new multipolar world is emerging.
So instead of one country calling all the shots, we're headed towards a world with multiple power centers.
Right. It's like a geopolitical seesaw that's finally starting to balance out a bit. Yeah. And he argues that this shift is being driven by a number of factors.
Okay.
Things like the rise of China, the resurgence of Russia, the growing economic influence of countries like India, and frankly, a growing dissatisfaction with the way things have been run on a global scale.
Yeah, I think a lot of countries are probably feeling like they haven't had much of a voice in shaping the global order.
Exactly. And he points to events like the formation of BRICS,
Right.
That alliance between Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa
Yep.
as a sign of this shift.
Uh-huh.
The growing use of currencies other than the US dollar is another indicator,
Yeah.
along with the fact that many countries just aren't willing to go along with Western sanctions anymore.
It's like the world is saying we're not playing by your rules anymore.
Right.
But it's not just about politics and economics, right? Chavda also talks about the role of technology,
Yes.
especially artificial intelligence,
Yes.
in shaping this new world order.
Absolutely. He sees AI as a potentially game-changing technology.
Sure.
As we've discussed, he believes the U.S. might already have AI that's smarter than humans,
It's wild.
which could give them a massive advantage.
What would the world even look like if one country had that kind of technological dominance?
That's a good question, and it's one we all need to be asking.
For sure.
And while Chavda acknowledges the potential for AI to solve some of the world's biggest problems,
Yeah.
he also warns that it could be misused.
Wow.
It's like any powerful tool.
Sure.
It can be used for good or for bad.
So it's not just about who develops the most advanced AI, but how it's used and controlled.
Exactly.
It makes you realize that the future isn't predetermined.
It's not.
Our choices as individuals and as a global community will shape what that future looks like.
That's such an important point, and he stresses the need to think carefully about the ethics of AI and ensure that its development is guided by human values.
Right.
He also believes that no single country can manage the risks and potential of AI alone.
Yeah.
International cooperation is essential.
He's really emphasizing that we're all in this together.
We are.
No country is an island,
Oh.
especially when it comes to something as powerful as AI.
Right.
But shifting gears a bit.
Okay.
Another theme that really stood out to me was his take on global alliances.
Okay.
He seems to believe that the traditional idea of allies and enemies is becoming a lot more fluid and unpredictable.
He's right, and that's a major shift from how things used to be.
Right.
He uses the example of Pakistan shifting its allegiance from China towards the U.S.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that countries will act in their own self-interest, and those interests can change over time.
It's like that saying, there are no permanent friends or enemies, only permanent interests.
Exactly. And he also points to the growing tensions between the U.S. and some of its traditional allies,
Like who?
like Canada and Europe.
Oh, wow.
It seems like the old rules of global politics are being rewritten.
So what does this all mean for how countries should approach alliances in the future?
Well, Chavda argues that nations need to be more pragmatic
Okay.
and less ideological.
Makes sense.
It's not about sticking to rigid alliances based on shared history or values,
Right.
but about forming strategic partnerships based on common goals and interests.
I see.
It's about being flexible and adaptable to a rapidly changing world.
So it's less about who's on our side and more about who can we work with to achieve a common goal.
Exactly. And he sees India as a potential bridge between the West and the East,
Yeah.
because they have strong ties to both sides.
Right.
He believes that India could play a really constructive role in promoting dialogue and cooperation between different blocs.
That makes sense. India is a rising power with a unique perspective.
Yeah.
But Chavda doesn't just want them to be a bridge.
No.
He also wants them to step up and be a leader on the global stage.
He does. He encourages India to be more assertive in defending its own interests.
Okay.
And to not be afraid to take a leadership role. It's
Oh,
like
yeah.
he's saying, you have a voice, India.
Yeah.
Use.
So after this deep dive into Abhijit Chavda's world,
Yeah,
we're left with this picture of a world that's in a state of transition.
definitely.
The old certainties are breaking down and new possibilities are emerging.
Right.
It's a little bit exciting, but also a little bit daunting.
It is. It really is.
He reminds us that we're not just passive observers of history,
Right.
but active participants in its unfolding.
It's true.
His analysis is a call to action, urging us to pay attention, engage with the world, and help shape the future we want to see.
He doesn't offer easy answers.
No,
But he gives us the tools to ask the right questions.
he does.
If the 2020s are truly a decade of massive geopolitical transformation, what does that mean for each of us, listener?
Yeah,
What role will you play in shaping the future?
it's a heavy question.
What kind of world do you want to live in?
Yeah.
These are the questions that Abhijit Chavda leaves us to ponder.
And those are questions worth thinking about.
They are.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It was my pleasure.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep